This is an 80 by 20 foot Gothic high tunnel that was just built on this historic farmland in Massachusetts. And in this video, I'll share why a structure like this makes sense for the right type of grower or farmer, and I'll share some practical tips on how you can apply the benefits of a high tunnel to your own backyard garden. So let's start off with the basics. What exactly is a high tunnel and what are the benefits it provides for growing plants? Imagine if your garden had a magical force field surrounding it, one that could block frost, tame the wind, and ward off pests from reaching your plants. That's essentially what a high tunnel does for your garden, though it isn't exactly magic. What it is essentially a giant unheated greenhouse. It's a simple metal frame covered in a translucent layer of specialized plastic sheeting, and unlike regular greenhouses with heaters and cooling systems, a high tunnel regulates the temperature through passive solar heating and natural ventilation. In other words, it's a big sunny bubble for your plants powered by the good old-fashioned sun. High tunnels are also tall enough for you to walk inside, hence high tunnel, and they're usually anchored right over the soil, meaning you can plant directly into the ground instead of raised benches or containers. So what are the benefits of a high tunnel? For one, you get a longer growing season. In cold climates like here in Massachusetts, growers are normally held back by winter weather, but with a high tunnel, you can get warm season crops like tomatoes and peppers into the ground weeks before your neighbors. And cool season crops like spinach, broccoli, and lettuce can keep growing deep into the fall months. Another major benefit is protection from bad weather. The covering protects against frost, heavy rain or hail, powerful winds, and even the sun itself. Outdoor plants would normally get tattered or damaged by these conditions, but inside the high tunnel, it's calm and cozy for the plants. Another benefit is higher quality produce and higher yields. Plants inside a high tunnel often look and taste better because they're not being battered by the elements. Plus, the consistent warmth and extended season can boost overall yield. That means there are more options to grow delicate crops like Asian cucumbers or melons, and better quality tomatoes and leafy greens to enjoy or sell at farmers markets. And another benefit is controlled watering. Since the soil is completely covered, watering is entirely controlled by the grower. This may sound like a drawback, like you have to do more work, but it's actually more of a benefit. Targeted watering with something like drip irrigation means no water ever touches the leaves, which means disease is greatly reduced. Plus, heavy rain and snow can cause erosion on exposed soil. But while there are tons of benefits to a high tunnel, it's not entirely hands-off. You'll need to monitor temperature and roll up the sidewalls so that your plants don't cook on hot summer days, and keep an eye on humidity, turning on fans to improve airflow. And though the plastic is surprisingly strong, it will need replacing every few years from normal wear and tear. Essentially, this type of structure is amazing for market farmers or serious homesteaders who want a much more consistent crop every season. They also come in a variety of sizes, so you don't have to commit to a huge 80-foot high tunnel like this one. You could size down to a 20-foot length or somewhere in between. Now, since this clearly isn't just a 1 or 2 hour backyard DIY project, let's go through what it took to build this high tunnel from scratch. First off, this is a high-quality high tunnel kit from Bootstrap Farmer, who is also the sponsor of this video, so we're showcasing their product, but the principles of building a high tunnel are pretty much the same. So if at any point you're thinking, I want one of these in my life, you can find links to explore their many different sizes and styles of high tunnels in the description below. But like I said in the intro, this high tunnel is a Gothic style. Basically, this means it has a peaked roof that's great for northern climates that get snowfall, as the snow will more easily slide off the plastic. Every Bootstrap tunnel comes with a detailed guide on how to build it from start to finish, but with that said, building a high tunnel isn't exactly a quick job. This high tunnel build took a couple weeks to complete, and the process looked something like this. First, they started by inventorying all the parts when they arrived, just to make sure that everything they needed was there. This makes sure the project can go on smoothly without worrying that something is missing in the middle of the build. Then the team got to work leveling the ground where the high tunnel would sit. They also wired in the electrical to the high tunnel at this point, and this would also be a good time to run water to the site if you wanted it on tap inside the tunnel. Next, the ground posts for the structure were set in place. These are the metal supports that are driven deep into the ground and hold the hoops up. Once those were in, all of the hoops were laid out and constructed on the ground, and eventually brought upright and anchored in place in the ground posts. Next, the purlins were installed, which brace the tunnel and make it structurally sound even in high winds, and the lateral purlins on either side can be used to grow string trellis crops like cucumbers or tomatoes vertically. This high tunnel will have roll-up sides for ventilation, and with the frame built, insect netting could now be added to the roll-up sections to prevent pests from entering the tunnel on hot days. And with that finished, it was time to add the plastic. Now this part can definitely be challenging, especially with an 80-foot length, so it was very helpful to work on a less windy day and with some extra helping hands. With some crafty maneuvering, the plastic was secured into place with spring wire. Next, the end frames were added with doors on either side and a ventilation fan on one side, and then covered with plastic to complete the build. For a few finishing touches, they'll be adding drip irrigation, additional fans, timers, and temperature controllers. And if you're looking for a more detailed instruction guide with more step-by-step visuals, I'll leave a link to a video over on Bootstrap Farmer's YouTube channel down below. And with all that work done, the high tunnel is finally ready to plant. Now, obviously, a high tunnel isn't for everyone, and making this sort of investment doesn't make sense for all types of growers. So let's talk about how you can apply some of the principles of a high tunnel to your own backyard garden. If you've got a raised bed, it's pretty easy to reproduce the main benefits of a high tunnel in your garden. The simplest option is a cold frame. These sit over the top of a small section of soil to prevent frost damage and get seedlings outside earlier. A similar option is a mini portable hoop tunnel. We actually have a video on our channel about how to build this. And we've built a couple of these, and they're super helpful for protecting small sections of the garden when needed. And if you have any raised beds, the best option is what we have over a couple of ours, metal conduit hoops that arch over the entire length. We use them to cover our garden with insect netting in the early season, and sometimes shade cloth during hotter parts of the year. We could also use them to cover the beds with greenhouse plastic, just like the high tunnel, and extend our growing season by a couple of weeks on either end. A few quick tips if you do want to give this a shot. Invest in something sturdy like metal conduit. It's a bit more tricky to bend the metal, but once they're in place, unlike PVC piping, they won't warp or degrade over time. Another tip is to use high quality materials to cover your beds. If you don't want strands of plastic stuck to your plants or torn materials that go to waste, it really pays to invest in something a bit higher grade that will last for many years. And lastly, don't forget to ventilate during hotter weather. Just like in a high tunnel, roll up the sides and let those plants breathe, or consider removing the covering altogether during the hottest part of the year. So as this high tunnel was being built, I got the chance to talk to some of the owners of this farmland and ask them why this investment made sense for their farm.
So I'm Lucinda Williams, and I am living on a multi-generational farm. Beldens have been on this land since 1661, and so it's over 350 years, still farming the land. Many different things have happened on the farm in these years. It's currently a dairy farm, but it's not always been dairy. We are here in a beautiful river bottom land. The Connecticut River is just right over the way. And this soil is fantastic. It's beautiful, beautiful. It's called Hadley loam. So we don't have any rocks here. So when we find a rock here, we think, who put that rock there?
Yeah, I was asking how deep these were, and Jill told me they're 3 or 4 feet deep.
Like butter. They just went right down.
Unbelievable.
So we see ourselves more as stewards of the land than owning the land. The land is here, and our goal, our life's work, is to use it the best we can and to hopefully leave it better than we found it.
Can you go into some of the pivotal changes over the history, whether it was 100 years ago or 200 years ago?
Right, yeah. So the first industry that was on this farm was to raise broom corn for broom making. We currently are not broom makers, but I think as each generation comes along, they choose and decide what is it that will work best for us. We've grown onions, grown strawberries, some pick your own. We were one of the first in the valley to have a pick your own outfit.
So in a world where I think small farms are sort of closing up shop more and more, how do you think this high tunnel might impact your business going forward?
We're always looking for a little diversification. Agriculture is a tough business. We really believe that people now have such a strong desire to know where their food comes from and to know the farms and to know the farmers. And we know that we can't just do dairy in these times. And so having the high tunnel is going to help us to be able to maybe broaden our horizons, do some other things, look at what else we can bring to our neighbors.
So my name is Jill, and my husband works full-time on our farm. My main role is to make things more complicated by adding things like high tunnels.
So you're gonna have this new high tunnel. What do you plan on growing, or what are you thinking about growing, and why?
So we're gonna start off with some winter greens and test that out since it's the fall and that's kind of the season we're going into. Starting in the spring, our goal is to plant some cut flowers, and then we're talking about either tomatoes or cucumbers on a trellis.
Nice. This doesn't look cheap. I'm sure it wasn't. Do you expect the structure to pay itself off, and how long might that take?
Yeah, so we kind of are investing upfront in this structure. This will last for years and years. The plastic itself will have, at least 4 to 6 years before it would even need replaced. And so a lot of the investment is upfront, and then we can use it for years to come. We are expecting to have everything paid off, and it kind of just depends on what we end up growing and kind of where we find our niche in our local market. And then we also were lucky enough to receive an NRCS grant, so that is also helping to offset the upfront cost on our end.
In your opinion, what's the real impetus behind this? What's driving you to want to build this now here?
I like to garden.
Yeah.
Our farm has always been a farm that adapts over time with what we grow and kind of what we focus on. And right now is kind of a really good time to take advantage of some smaller plots of land that we have to bring in some higher value per acre crops and kind of add in that little diversification to what we have as a whole on the farm. And we have goats.
I thought it was pretty fascinating to learn about the benefits of a high tunnel for growers and market farmers. Thank you to everyone at Belden Farm for allowing us to come and film this setup and watch the process. It's been really fun. If you happen to be interested in building your own high tunnel, I'll leave links in the description below so you can check out some of the different options in sizing and materials on bootstrapfarmer.com. Either way, I hope this video gave you some ideas on how you can apply these principles to your own backyard garden. Thanks for watching Geeky Greenhouse, and I'll see you soon.